Boom! Hello and welcome to the Executive Protection Lifestyle Podcast, Season 4.
With your host, Byron Rodgers. This podcast is dedicated to the executive protection practitioner, the private security professional. In this podcast, we're going to talk about the mental, emotional, psychological, physiological fitness that goes into being an efficient and effective executive protection agent. Whether you're in law enforcement, whether you're a mom that's looking at how to protect her children, or a father that's focused on how to protect his family, I believe this podcast has something for all of you. We might even get into some tales from the crypts of true Hollywood stories from time to time. I'm doing this podcast because I feel the reality of this job is simple. If you really want to be good at executive protection, it's more than just a job. It really is a lifestyle. And those of you who've been in the game for any serious amount of time, you already know what I'm saying is true. So if that sounds interesting to you, enjoy the show. Out.
Boom! What's up, you guys? Welcome back to another episode. This one's probably going on both podcasts because it's that good. I've got Dean Stott here in the house, man. How you doing?
Good, thank you. Yeah, appreciate having me on.
Yeah, brother. It's an honor, man. You've done so much. I'm over here like Googling you. I mean, I remember first meeting you at the Close Protection Conference at the EP Forum. We had that big party in that penthouse. Yes. And seeing you up there and you were speaking and doing all kinds of awesome things, man. And it was an honor then. We hung out. You're a cool dude. And we've been meaning to do this for like a year. And here we are, right?
Yeah. And likewise, I'm working, as you know, with some brands. And obviously everyone knows I'm still in the security sector. And they're like, your name comes up all the time. And I was like, yeah, I actually know who he is now, and I've met him. So yeah, it's good to finally get this going.
No, it's good to hear that for sure, man. Same circles, same circles, for sure. So yeah, dude, I Google you, after we talk, and you got pictures up here with Prince Harry, you're hanging out with Jocko. I was like, dude, I got to get this guy on my podcast where he's too famous,
No, not at all.
Nah, man, but you're a humble, down-to-earth guy too, those are always the realest guys, man. The guys that aren't hiding behind what they've done, that are just like, will look you in the eyes, shake your hand, and be at your service if you need them, so I appreciate that about you. No,
I appreciate it. Yeah, I thank you for the comment. It's one of the, one of the ethoses of our UK Special Forces. One of them is humility. It is because you just never know who you're chatting to, who they are and what they know, and the circles that they are in. You know what I mean? So, like I said, I rub shoulders with royalty, but I think one of the things my wife says to me is one of my USPs is I can talk to anyone, whether you're a young lad on the streets in Mogadishu or whether you are a member of the royal family. I don't treat you any differently. You get treated exactly the same from me. So, yeah, and I think that's important as well for a lot of people.
100%. It's ridiculously important, man. And with the kind of different types of humans that we get to spend time with, one day, you are speaking with royalty. The next day you are speaking to some guy you're meeting off the street in some other country who, could be the local sheik's son, or someone that could literally decide if you live or die while you're out there, walking around on patrol or whatever you're getting into. Yeah. Or if you're an EP, it could be that person that can get a door open for you and give you that access that you need.
Yeah. And as you touched on there, to be successful in EP and security and to continue in that, it's not about what someone made a good comment to me. It's not about what people say in front of you, it's what they're saying when you're not there. And that's important as well, is, first impressions last. Everything you do is a reflection on you. And as you touched on EP, when you're representing some of these high profile clients, you're almost a reflection on them as well. So the way that you act will reflect, on them and the way they're being perceived as well. So yeah, it's something that some people struggle with, but for me, it seems quite natural.
100%. No. And so yeah, you got the social dynamics. You're a genuine guy, and then, of course, it's the part for you that's painful. But I got to talk about like who you are and how cool you are for a minute, so the listeners know. You've broken 2 world records. You were British Special Forces, SBS. You're doing some consulting in the private security realm. You might be running around on TV. You got a book that you're dropping. You've been the type of warrior who's made some awesome contributions at some pretty high levels, and a lot of that a lot of that momentum and steam, you're supporting a nonprofit with some of the proceeds from your book and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Real quick.
Yeah, so the proceeds from the book we go into the Honor Foundation, which is US based, and they basically help the transition for special forces operators going into the civilian sector. And I can sort of relate to that myself, you know, and as you when you left the Marine Corps, you know, I unfortunately left because I had a parachuting accident. I didn't want to leave. You know, I was what we know as a lifer. I did 16 years up until that point. I joined at the age of 17. And so after the parachuting injury, I found myself, you know, quickly going into the civilian sector, which was obviously the private security sector. Yeah. But for me, it was a real identity crisis. You know, I knew when I was in the military, I was working alongside like-minded individuals that had the same drive, the same passion, and the sort of same goals and knowing what I was doing for the next 2 years, it was all planned out to, you know, where do I now fit in society? What is my role? Where do my skill sets, and how can I contribute to society still? But also to add to the pressure as well. My wife was 8 months pregnant as well, so I was worried if there was any work out there and things like that. So that identity crisis, that transition from the military to civilian is quite alien. I never feel like you fully transition. I think we're always still transitioning. Yeah. Once you're in the military, you're always in the military. And so the Honor Foundation sort of really resonated with me on that. It is being able to sort of help those, because what you do when you're in the military and you see people being successful in the outside world, and they say, well, I can't do that because I don't have a degree or I don't have that. You know, actually, you underestimate what skill sets you already have from your time in the military. Yep. And it's just really sort of giving them that confidence, letting them know that they are already probably steps ahead of some of their peers. Yeah. And actually it isn't as alien as you think it is. And then hopefully their transition will be smoother. So so $5 for every book that we sell will go towards the Honor Foundation.
That is super dope, to use a scientific term, man. I love that. And you touched on it. I mean, you said it beautifully. I think, you know, it's all about finding that new fight, man. It's all about recognizing what we have in these engines that we've built that we can translate over into a new battlefield, man. And guys that don't do that, that engine can eat them alive, you know, and that is the new war, you know, and I think it's even a little bit more sophisticated because nothing will bring you closer to destruction than comfort, man. You know, that thing inside you can eat you alive if you don't put it to good use. That's awesome, dude. That's something I'm pretty passionate about. Wrote a book about the topic too.
Yeah, because I think you know, for me it was like, you know, what is it we can do out there? I talk about some of the skill sets, you know. And we'll go into the security, you know, without sounding like Liam Neeson, people with our particular skill sets would naturally go into the security industry. But that isn't for everyone who leaves the military. It's just it's everything. And you know, I ran security for an event for the UK trade investment to go for the oil and gas companies to go present to the Libyan oil and gas. So these guys, 4 companies, are on 6-7 figure salaries. These guys, and they're representing their brands And every presentation failed. They didn't have their slides in the correct order. They weren't confident speaking in front of a crowd. And it's like, wow, they're the things we take for granted from the military because we have to give a set of orders. You know, we have to present in large numbers. And so it's just, yes, you may have a degree, but if you can't interpret that or translate that, then it's no use. So there are, and that's what I sort of emphasize to those guys and girls that are leaving, that you do have a particular set of skills away from the military and the military sort of tactics that will be really contributing. You know, we're thrown in scenarios where things don't go to plan. You know, the plan doesn't survive. It doesn't survive first.
Like what we do.
Whereas a lot of the corporate world, they're like, you know, if it doesn't go to plan, they just don't know what to do. And so they're the sort of things that I think that the veterans can really contribute to some of these businesses, being there, being reactive to situation changes, working under pressure, having targets and objectives, because everything we do in the military is a mission or an objective, everything that we do. And we will always make sure that we're successful on that mission objective, regardless the path that we're taking.
What happens? Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I love it, dude. And not to beat a dead horse, but I was thinking about this today, man. And I was like in the gym and I was hammering and I was like, I was looking at, the things that have allowed me to do more than some of my peers that have been smarter than me. Like they can look at numbers and spreadsheets. They can do so many things better than me, but like I've kind of gone farther in some ways. And I was like, what is the thing? It's like, well, I got this kind of fearless thing. And it's like, well, nothing's as bad as some of the stuff I had to do in the Marine Corps. Like I'm not cold and wet. I'm just not. Like it's just not that bad of a thing. I'm not cold and wet, And I started thinking about this stuff and I'm like, a lot of, I think what we really get, the edge you get from a lot of that like hardcore kind of trauma we get is emotional intelligence, man. It's so underrated. You can take 100 people that are really smart. You can put them in the same room. And what makes a difference? Who goes and gets after it and applies and executes and continues to execute? This emotional intelligence. I know we're dudes and we're like hard dudes and like we don't have emotions, but emotional intelligence, man, being able to be calloused and stay focused and prioritize and execute.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot to be said for the emotional intelligence we learn with
I've heard that myself, the emotional intelligence, but also being able to communicate. Like some guys, and it's not, and girls, not their fault of their own. They've done a whole career in the military, but don't know how to communicate to civilians. Some of them come out and they're screaming and shouting at these civilians. And it's like it's a different world. And so those sort of communication skills people sort of lack. They don't know how to address those that they're talking to. So yeah,
man. That is when I recruit veterans into private security. That's one of the biggest sticking points is going to be communication and presentation. Like we're not there anymore. So can you like be a dude now? Like can you be a dude?
Yeah.
A professional, or can you be a civilian professional now? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Presentation, as you touched on, like you said, you're an extension of your client, So I would never be, in tight t-shirts and tattoos in front of the client. I had a client actually. We went to Greece for a week, and I was there in my suit, my shirt, my trousers, and just ran the whole week. And then on the last day, we had a few hours before we were flying. They said, "Oh, we're going to go to the swimming pool. Do you want to come join us?" And I said, "Okay." So I just came out the gym, and I had this old singlet on, and their faces were like, it's almost like they didn't realize I had tattoos, and it was like interesting how you can sort of dress up and dress down to the situation that you're in.
It's got to be done. No, I love it, man. So just so you guys know, this is going to be an awesome episode. We're going to talk a little bit about a lot of things, maybe some Afghanistan evacuations, maybe some kidnapping, maybe some Canadian embassy evacuation. He's done some amazing things. 2-time world champion. Can't wait.
Boom. If you've been enjoying the podcast, I want to encourage you to come and train with me. Train with us, the League of Executive Protection Specialists. We offer online courses so you can train and learn how to take your executive protection career to the next level from the comfort of your own home. We offer on-ground training on everything from the hard skills of driving, shooting, medical, and into the soft skills through the Executive Protection Immersion course, which is one of the most experiential, learning-centric courses in the executive protection industry. Either way, I want you to become part of the golden standard in the private security industry and join the brotherhood, the League of Executive Protection Specialists. Go to epspecialist.com and let's do our careers together. I'll see you there. Out.
But I always love to start off with the same question. Who are you at your core, man? Who's the man behind the work that's been able to get all these things done?
Who's, I always say, I'm here now talking to you, but it wouldn't be possible without the team around you. As you said, we have a vision and a passion, but in the special forces, there's a statistic for every guy that steps off the aircraft, jumps out the plane, dives onto the boat, takes 7 other people behind the scenes. So I'd love to take credit for everything, but for me, it's having that support network around me. And probably the closest support network is my wife. My wife, when you get to know her and speak to her and read the book, it is, she's the campaign director. When I left the military, we talked already about the transition. You know, I see guys in guild, some of their transition can be quite smooth and some are quite turbulent. You tend to find those that are quite smooth are those that have a good, solid family base around them who follow them through that transition. And so for me, I'd gone from, you know, the age of 17 to 33 in the military. You know, you're the military, like your mother, your father, they clothe you, they feed you, they pay you on time, you know, everything's dealt with. So your focus is the objective or your mission. Yep. So when you're leaving the military, I don't know who I need to speak to in the city or whoever, or about housing or whatever that, you know. So thankfully for me, my wife was very entrepreneurial and she took that responsibility away. So again, I still don't know who I bank with. I still don't know who provides heating for the house. You know, she does that. So, you know, she's obviously the one who's the core, but behind the scenes. And like I said, I genuinely believe that anyone can break 2 world records if you've got someone at home running the businesses, taking care of the kids, the family, the mortgages, and all I've got to do is ride a bike. Then that's possible. So I have to give that shout out and that credit to my wife.
Yeah, that's such an awesome answer. It's great. Well done. No, I love it, man. I have definitely really realized and leaned into the messaging around, you know, helping people realize that I'd say one metric of the value of your life, like one of the most important metrics I think a human should focus on, is how much better they make other people's lives by the contributions they make with their life. And if you really want to have a large impact, that ability to impact others is going to come from your ability to drive results through the people around you, which means building them up, creating generals, surrounding yourself with other juggernauts. And you might be the face, or you might be the neck, or you might be the pinky, but like really learning how to get people, you know, to get behind a mission is like such a superpower. And it's awesome that you've done that, man.
No, it's good. But it
says a lot about you, though. It says a lot about you as a teammate, you know, as a leader, as someone worth like contributing to, you know, as someone who's worth her putting her life and her assets behind. So you can be that tip of the spear and she can be the javelin that, you know, gets you there and all that stuff. That says a lot about you guys, man. That's huge.
I mean, a lot of people say, oh, no, as you touched on, what separates me from my peers who had, you know, probably more educated and things like that. And for me is like, I'm not more educated. I just have a great support network who have the same, and there's no one better than your wife or a family member who's going to protect you and the family as well. You know what I mean? So that, you know, so while you're out doing these things, they're making sure everything's where it should be. Contracts are signed. You know, I still don't do contracts. I don't do NDAs. My wife does all that. I'm almost like, I'm the extrovert. I'm the one that people like to socialize with. And then my wife comes in behind me with a contract. And
the knife. Chopping, dicing, making sure, okay, no, this is what he'll sign.
Exactly. Yeah. Even on the security stuff, like when I left, my wife was a bank manager, and we were actually going to go into the security industry when I left as a couple. I sort of going back slightly, when I had the parachuting injury and realized that I was leaving, I sort of knew the security sector was probably the quickest and easiest, you know, footstep. And so I did a quick bit of research because I didn't have long, and I didn't want to go out to Afghanistan and Iraq again. You know, I've done a number of tours there before. I didn't want to be on any 6-week rotations out in the desert with some of the oil and gas. So I spoke to a friend of mine, and he was the head of EP for Control Risk Group at the time. And he was telling me, actually, and as you all know, in the security industry, the risk-reward ratio isn't balanced. You could be out in Afghan and Iraq, you know, under some extreme pressures, rounds coming down, your lives at risk, or you could be doing the high-end corporate stuff in these 5-star hotels, flying around the world, private jet, and actually be on more money. So I was like, so that's where So I decided I would do more the corporate EP when I initially got out. And my wife, being my wife, she's like, well, I want to do it as well. So I then found out who was the best person in the industry at the time who can train on corporate close protection. And there's an old gentleman, ex-SAS guy back in Hereford called Jins Johnson. Yeah, Jins Johnson, his name is, an old boy. And we went and did his course, me and Alana. I'd already done the PS1s within the special forces, but Ginge, he sort of came in, and it's such a humble guy. Interesting that we were out in Afghanistan, and he was training the Mujahideen back in the 70s, with the special forces. So
it's salty, man.
Yeah, but for him, it was the soft skills. It was all the other stuff, behind the scenes stuff, which was great. So our sort of initial plan was me and Alana would do, because there was a lack of females in the industry at the time, and we'd do corporate. And then Alana got pregnant with our daughter Molly. So when I was leaving the gates, within 48 hours, I got a phone call asking if I could help set up the British Embassy in Benghazi. They had a project called Department for Institute Development. So this was May 2011, the height of the Arab Spring. So Gaddafi was now surrounded in Tripoli, and everyone was in Benghazi. All the big security companies were coming in. I call them the big five. I never like to name and shame. They were all there, and they're just touting for work. The oil and gas were there, the NGOs, the media outlets. Mm-hmm. And so my friend was like, look, I need to fly in 30 EP guys next week. Can you go in, get them accommodation, get everything sorted out? So I flew in, literally my first task. I came in fresh on the military. The British Embassy at one location, they said, you can come stay with us. But I wasn't comfortable with that, because if we were all co-located there, then it was one target. And for me, I'm thinking QRF, if that position got hit. Yeah, the military. My military head sort of came on. So I said, no, we'll go to the hotel in town, which had a swimming pool. And they all thought it was because of the swimming pool. It wasn't. It was because it was offside. Yeah,
complicated things. For
yeah, complicated. But when I got there, I soon identified that the Libyans didn't want this being another Afghanistan and Iraq. Once Gaddafi had fallen, they wanted to take control of their own country. And we had been given these MP7 weapon systems from the UK law enforcement. And I made a decision straight away that we're not going to carry them, because we didn't need them. There was actually no threat to us. So really, it's getting on the ground and understanding the atmospherics, identifying whether there's threats or not. But also that these other security companies were charging 6-7-figure sums for crisis management and evacuation plans, and selling them off. But when I actually started scraping the surface, I soon realized that actually there wasn't anything in place. It was about as good as the paper it was written on. But a lot of these corporates need to have that box ticking exercise. Right. So the week later, the 30 guys all flew in, straight out of Afghanistan and Iraq. And and they're like, where's our weapons? And I know straight away, I'm like, right, this isn't Afghanistan, Iraq. And I said, this is Libya. We have weapons if we need them. We don't need them, and gave them a full breakdown. And they got it. They were like, oh, right. I don't know what they thought they were coming into, because obviously what was on the news. Yeah. So I set up that project, came home, and my wife gave birth to our daughter. But I was sort of thinking for me, I was trying to find a niche within the industry. All my friends were now doing maritime security off the east coast of Africa, because it was at its height at this point.
That's what time it was. Yeah, man. I remember those contracts being like, man, do I want to go overseas? Doing all this Kush. I was working all the Kush stuff over here with clients, private jets and all the comfy stuff. And I was like, man, I want to get after it. But it
was good. It was good at the time, and the bottom's falling out of it now. But it's at the time it was good. But I didn't want to be competing with my friends. I wanted to find a niche for Dean Stott. And so I really thought on that crisis management thing. And I said to my wife, I went back, I said, look, I've got an idea. Do you mind if I take the money out of our savings? And, Alana is very, I've always spoken highly of her. She's very open-minded, looks at opportunities, sees opportunities, doesn't sort of wait and think, oh, we missed that. She sees it and said, yeah, go. So there was a huge proliferation of weapons at this point in Libya, because the war was still going on. So I went back in and I bought 30 weapons on the black market, and I buried them between Tunis and Egypt, and just designed my own evacuation plans, buried communications kit, some money, and just had them located near safe houses, and designed my own evacuation plans. I spent a month in the desert designing it. We got access on the sea, we got access on the road, and looked at all the options that were available. Put it together nice and neatly, and then sold it to some of the oil and gas sector. and hopefully never needing to use that.
Use it, right?
Yeah. But one of the things, another thing that I was lucky with Alana is that she was happy that I was doing ad hoc work. So each time I got a phone call, it was a different task. It was a different country. It was a different situation. Yeah. And so, maybe can you take the UAE royal family super yacht from Barcelona to Maldives? The next phone call, London Olympics. The next phone call, train the Kurdish Special Forces. So each one, I was actually learning a lot about corporate security in a short period of time and getting exposure to the different elements of the security industry. Because as you know, people that look like you and I, when you tell people you're in security, I think they think you're a doorman from the local nightclub. It's actually,
you're a bouncer, or they think mall cop. And you're like, you know what?
Exactly.
Yeah. You say bodyguard, they kind of start to get it. And you're like, yeah, but I don't want to,
Yeah. But for like me, it was everything. It was from surveillance, it was crisis management, close protection, coaching or mentoring. It's such a big industry, and so I was literally learning as much as I could. And I was learning about NDAs, contracts, and things like that. But really building a reputation within the industry. And I like to, depending on the threat, ideally work on my own. So I've been Yemen and Somalia on my own in places like that, because for me it was like, the bigger the team, the bigger the sort of risk, the bigger the welfare. You don't, some of the guys you work with, you never worked with them before. So for me, I had a smaller footprint. I stand out a bit. I had a smaller footprint, but I was able to get around a lot quicker and easier and get what I needed. So I soon became the one that, one to go to. My wife says my USP was, as we touched on before, I can talk to anyone around the world. Yes, I've got a bald head and blue eyes, but I remember a conversation I had in Somalia with one of the clients there, and it's like, they get emails all the time from security companies in London and New York and things like that, all offering the same services. And they said, but you've taken the time to come here, sit down with us, share bread, share water, and get a real feel for the atmosphere. So that meant a lot for them. So that's where I was getting a lot of business, is actually going in on my own with no plan and just starting to speak to people and sort of understanding, what is the actual threats and what is it that actually media are pushing out. So down in Mogadishu, I used to go spearfishing just south of Mogadishu, and it's like, it's beautiful waters, and you tell people that, like, what? But they won't see that from what's on the news. So I was doing a lot of stuff in a short period of time, and then in 2012, I just finished the London Olympics, and I tended to find that every time I had a good job, something bad, not something bad, there'd be a bad scenario, and it was quite common practice. So I just finished the London Olympics. Great 6 weeks in London, all the games. Visa was the client, which was one of the main sponsors. We talk about 5-star hotels.
Man. Getting to the city sucked.
Exactly. Yeah. It was a bit easier being from the UK and then obviously being one of the main sponsors. But that was a great. I always remember the games being great. Great for the UK. And then next thing, I'm in Benghazi the following week. Going on a recce. And it was September 11th, 2012, when your American ambassador got killed. They made a movie called 13 Hours. So I say right place, right time. It's right place, right time for me. Wrong place, wrong time normally for someone else. If I have to show up. And so someone knew I was there, and they asked if I could help a German oil company get their engineers back from Benghazi to Tripoli. So that's what I did. But everything I do, I look at the success of a lot of these things is understanding the demographics, the politics, the tribal influences within the country, and having a real understanding of that. And that's been the sort of successes of my project. So really, you could get a vehicle from Benghazi to Tripoli in 6-7 hours. But for me, the issue I had is the drivers I had were from Benghazi, and they would just bring too much heat and attention in Tripoli. And so that option wasn't available. So I had a safe house down in Zella. So we moved out to the safe house in Zella. And some of my weapons were buried there. And we just sat there, in this safe house. We were safe. We were monitoring the situation over the next 24, 36 hours to see what was going to unravel from Benghazi. But unbeknown to my drivers in Benghazi who were with us, I had I had drivers coming in from Tripoli because they would take us onwards. They would take us onwards. So the next morning I woke up and they'd arrived early in the night and there's arguing in the courtyard, and I went out.
They're about to get into a firefight in the courtyard.
Oh, yeah. The pistols were out, and it's like I said, and I sat down with him, and I sat and I explained to him. I said, look, I said, would you, to the Benghazi driver, I said, would you be happy to go to Tripoli? And they said, no, but we'll do it. I said, yeah. I said, but their concern was they weren't going to get paid. I said, no. So you're getting paid and paid a bonus because you've got us up until here. I said, but you will bring more heat and attention to us on that. So I sort of use that as an example as like, some other security providers may just see, well, like we can get them there in 7 hours, but then not realize, them sort of tribal influences and things like that. So because of the success of that, fast forward 2 years, I'm in Brazil now at the World Cup. so I'm enjoying the Soccer World Cup now, and I'm sort of getting flashbacks to Brazil. And I was there, and while I was in Brazil, what was unraveling in Libya was the Tripoli war, a civil war between the militias and the governments. And all the embassies had gone. They'd shut shop apart from one, which was the Canadians. And so I get this phone call, and this young girl's like, Dean, your name keeps coming up. Not a security company, just your name.
Yeah.
And she explained the situation. So I flew back in from Brazil via London and went to Libya. So they had 18 military and 4 diplomats. Their security detail were all reservists, and not their fault at all. But every 4 months they would rotate. Another unit would come in and take over. But during their period there, they'd never left the city walls of Tripoli. Their sort of normal movements would be from Palm City, where the accommodation is, to the Tripoli Towers, where the office is. Okay. So the actual road from Tripoli to Tunis is only 100 kilometers. It's not far at all, but it's just they didn't have any visibility or eyes on. But also the week before, the British embassy had got shot at every checkpoint on the way out. And the reason for that was, and I only found out later, is that they didn't stop at the checkpoints. They drove straight through.
Well, so this it sounded like, and they got shot at every checkpoint.
Oh, yeah. By the time Chinese whispers, by the time they'd gone back to Tripoli, it's like, it's going to be World War III. Yeah, So my team for this project was me, a 50-year-old internet shop owner from UK, who was actually from the tribes that we were going through. Okay. Spoke perfect English, understood the Western sort of, when I say timings, he understands Western timings and not inshallah, and it'll happen in slow time. 100%. And then 2 fish wagons, which I'll go on to slightly in a minute. So myself and my fixer, we went out and we didn't speak to the checkpoints. We didn't speak to the guys with the guns because they're normally the younger guys, and they're just being told. And we actually went and spoke to the tribal elders, sat down with them, shared bread, coffee, and it was all about respect. Showing them respect, communication, letting them know we were no threat. Or yes, we we gave them a couple $100, yeah, whatever. But and that's all it was. And it then realized that the Brits had just tried to drive through. They didn't know they were coming, so they weren't aware of that. So, and that's all it needed was just that sort of communication. And yeah, I mean we then moved out the next morning. I was lead vehicle with my fixer. And I had communications with Chad, who's their TL for the military, and I would be at the next checkpoint, making sure there's no issues, just driving through, and then just radioing through, and we got them all the way safely. So it sounds very sexy in Hollywood, but the weapons I've never needed to dig up. They've always been there as a backup scenario if we need it, because. And all I've done there is I've just taken what I've learned in the special forces into the civilian sector, because everyone sees on the Hollywood doesn't help matters, as
everything worse.
They see the biceps, the bullets, and the bombs, and it's like, yeah, that's special forces. That's 25% of what we do, that offensive action. Actually, 50% of what we do is support and minds, heart, and support and influence hearts and minds, being embedded with locals. But that's not sexy on TV.
Yeah.
But that's what I sort of capitalized on. This was that support and influence. And so it was just more of an intelligence-led security operation. And like I said, on paper, the perfect team for that would be 6 to 8 guys like you and I.
Yeah.
But actually, when I made the assessment, it was just one fixer and 2 fish wagons because they had so much additional equipment. I said, well, you need to keep the essential stuff in your vehicles. But the fish wagons go to Tripoli to Tunis every day. So the borders are expecting them. So they didn't stop them. They just waved them straight through. So it's just really understanding that. And so, yeah, that was the Canadian embassy.
Yeah. And the fish wagons were like camouflage, basically.
Yeah, like camouflage. They knew, the drivers knew the border guys, and they just waved them through and didn't even stop them.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. And that, it's really a high speed, and it's a sexy sounding mission, but that's private security. That's private security. It's the social dynamics, getting with the house, respecting the house, respecting all your auxiliary teammates, respecting the nanny mafia and the PA.
Yeah. Respect everyone. Yeah, everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, man. And trying to make their job easy, making your job they make your job easy. Yeah. And getting the mission done, That's awesome.
Yeah. No, it was good. Yeah. And I came home from that trip, and my normal SOP, my standard operational procedure would be to launder my clothes, charge my phone, and get ready for the next phone call. That's what it was. But my wife then identified that I'd only, there was blood on one of my shirts, and the reason for that was when we got to the Tunis border, there was a road traffic collision, and so I was administering some first aid. It wasn't as bad as it sounded. I just got blood on me, and so my wife's like, why have you got blood on your shirt? And I sort of explained what I'd just done, and it was almost like a throwaway comment that you just evacuated the embassy on your own. It's like, so we sat down at even a couple of bottles of wine, and soon realized I'd only been home 21 days in a 365-day calendar. I disconnected from society. What I thought was normal wasn't normal for everyone else. Right. And so I was trying to match that adrenaline rush of being in the special forces without coming to terms with the fact that I'd left. And this is 5 years I haven't left the military camp. Yeah. And so something had to change. Chapter 16 in my book is called Dead or Divorced. And that's the conversation me and my wife are having at this stage. And it's like, you can continue at this pace of life, but you will either be dead or divorced. And so that was my wake up call, the pin drop that, I took a sabbatical from the security industry for a couple of years from that point onwards. Yeah.
That's interesting that you mentioned that, man. I think I experienced the same thing, but I dealt with it a lot less constructively. I just went hard. I started making 6 figures when I was 21, traveled the world, hit 60 countries, started making money and just started partying, and was ultra functional partier, because I was a Marine. I didn't need sleep anyway. So I just went crazy. And then, but then I started to realize hey, bro, what are you doing, bro? Are you just trying to match kind of the dopamine? Are you trying to just keep it full tilt because the world's a cartoon now because you're not in the military? You're like a Lamborghini stuck in a school zone for the rest of your life, And I was able to wake up to that and then get real about trying to make, my waking life, the war, to perfect, the war to perfect life, the act of life, really, and contribution. So it sounds kind of like you were kind of doing the same thing. You were like, woo, I can do it, run it. It's awesome that your wife was able to ground you. What do you think helped you make that transition? Now that we're back on the veteran thing, just briefly, but did you go through a dark time of just being bored? Did you just kind of rearrange your values and then kind of it made sense to you? Did you drink and do a bunch of cocaine and hookers for a while?
No, I wish I had done all that, but I didn't do that. It was just work after work. So when I left, like I said, you've gone from being 100 miles an hour, you're at the top of your game and you're doing it, you're living the dream. What these young kids play nowadays are Call of Duty. It was my lifestyle day in, day out. I was very fortunate. I joined the Special Forces at the height of the war on terror. It was the busiest time in UK Special Forces history. So I was doing operational jumps, dives, back-to-back tours. I was literally ticking a lot of boxes. So it's gone from that to then stop. I do this and not die. Yeah, so I'll probably cover the incident, actually, the injury which stopped it. So I was going back out. Yeah, I was going back out on another tour to Afghanistan. We're doing pre-deployment training, and we're doing what is called a hey-ho jump. high altitude, high opening. So unlike Halo, which is skydive freefall, this one, you exit the aircraft at 15,000 feet. The parachute is still attached to the aircraft. As you exit the aircraft, it gets taut, pulls it back, and then parachute opens straight away. And then at 15,000 feet, you can travel up to 30 minutes or 50 kilometers to the target area. So it gives you that distance of flying. And so I'd done about 3 of these this day, and just a normal jump exited. But when I exited this time, a leg was caught in the line above my head.
You did 3 of them one day? You said you did 3 of them this day, or just 3 of them ever?
No, the freedoms in there. We've done.
Oh yeah, before lunch. Yeah, cheerio, no big deal.
Yeah, that's it. It was just a routine jump, just back out doing, just because more consistent, more training you get, the better you are. Yeah, and actually, I didn't need to be on that jump. We had a load of new lads just past selection, and so they needed to get hey-ho trained, and so our sergeant major was like, "Well, just go do some fun jumps already, or because we're already trained." But there's no such thing as a fun jump in the military, and so.
No fun.
So yeah, I exited the aircraft. My leg was caught in the line above my head. So I was trying to clear it in time before it pulled completely back and took my leg off. But I couldn't clear it. My leg got pulled over my head into my right. And thankfully, my ankle cleared from the line and my leg wasn't taken completely off. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But straight away, the pain, I'd never experienced pain like it. I was vomiting because of the pain. And at 15,000 feet, it's the highest you can jump before going on O2. And so the air was quite thin, and I was drifting in and out of consciousness. And I can see the rest of the guys in my stick. There's no point in coming on the radio and telling them I've got a sore leg, because there's nothing they can do. And so I had to really assess the approach and landing. I landed perfect. It was a one-legged landing. It was good, but the damage sustained, I tore my ACL, my MCL, my lateral meniscus in my knee, my hamstring, my calf, and my quadriceps, all the supporting muscles as well. So
the only thing you didn't do was lose your leg.
was lose my leg, yeah.
And skin was just holding your stuff.
Yeah, but I obviously got to this period in my life through my sort of physical robustness, that's something that got to me. So then when I left those camp gates, I'd lost that identity. The identity crisis of I couldn't even run 100 meters without my knee giving way. And so really I felt like a part of me I'd lost already. So obviously when I then came out and Alana was 8 months pregnant, I was so focused. It wasn't so much on the adrenaline rush. It was bringing the money in, which was good. Yeah, and then it was the adrenaline rush. It was each mission was and that's why people say when others won't, Dean would. It was I would be going. My perception on risk was probably a bit. Some people a lot more risk averse than what I was. It was just probably because I knew I sort of
You're probably
read. Oh yeah, and I read the ground properly, and I had good fixers. It's all about having good fixers, people you can trust in the country. Right. So it wasn't because I was taking any more risks. I just had more ground connectivity. But yeah, I when I came back from the Canadian Embassy in Alana, and I soon realised there's actually communication between me and Alana. I didn't need to be going away. She had a very successful property development business. I didn't need to be doing that, and so something had to change. But you can imagine when my backstory sat in these architects and planners meetings, I was like, oh my God, I wasn't interested at all.
Kill yourself.
Yeah. As you said, to keep those dopamines going and keep that adrenaline going, I needed to do something. And that's when my wife looked at me and she said, you need to fucking do something. And I'm not saying smuggle people across borders, but need to do something to keep yourself physically and mentally engaged. And I think all of us need to do that. And that's when we came up with the bike ride.
Had to have been.
Yeah, that.
Okay, fine. I'm gonna just superpowers, break 2 world records. That should calm me down a little bit. Get me into family mode. I love it. No, that's awesome. But so road to recovery, there had to have been some pretty serious psychological milestones. When you broke after that jump, that's a death of an identity. Was it something that you kept on your mind to get you through that rehab, or was it just kind of well, we're not going to let this kill us, so we're going to keep handling it? Or any jewels listening that are going through something like that?
I think the initial one, I was in a dark place. I think the initial one, looking back now on reflection, is at least I'm here to tell the story. I've got a lot of friends who aren't here to tell the story, you know, that their kids are orphans and their wives are widows. And so very fortunate in that aspect, you know, and I probably wouldn't be here telling this story if I was still in and didn't have the injuries. It's what happens and what life throws at you and how you sort of deal with it. But, you know, I talked about the injury. That was just the start of it. You know, there was a whole spiral of errors in the military. They lost my medical documents. You know, my MRI scans, I was supposed to get rehab straight away. It took me 44 weeks to get operated on. And so I literally, because I was about to sue the military, I was like, you need to operate on me because I need to now start working. And so I missed all that rehab. You know, there was a spiral of errors, and it didn't stop there. You know, I wasn't paid out on the right pension. It took me 5 years. Then I won a tribunal hearing in the end. So, you know, as well as all this going on,
it's a whole war, bro.
You're dealing with all of that. And I didn't realize how important it was to me until I actually won the tribunal hearing 5 years later. And because I felt like I'd been reciprocated for my time and my flesh and everything I put into it, rather than just kicked out the door. And so there's a lot of things going on. And it shouldn't be like that. And that's one of the areas we have in the UK military. And I think it's also the same here. You guys have very similar sort of situations as well. So for me, was thankful that, you know, I'm still alive. Yes, I can't run anymore, but what can I do? Okay, so that avenue's blocked off. But what are the other avenues that we could focus on? So with the bike ride, that period when Alana asked me to do property development, my injured leg now was 2 kilos lighter than my good leg because of muscle wastage. It'd been about 5 years. So while I was doing all the security stuff, I had a TRX that I'd take away with me, but I wasn't doing any sort of cardiovascular stuff. And so I just bought a push bike off Amazon, just cycled 8 miles there, 8 miles back. Not big mileage, but just getting the lungs going, doing that cardiovascular. I felt like I was pulling some of that identity back. You know what I mean? I couldn't run. And so when Alana said, look, you need to do something, I always recall reading a book as a young child. It was called the Guinness Book of Records. Yeah. And, you know, just fascinated, all these amazing achievements that people did. And I was a month before my 40th birthday. And so I was having a midlife crisis, like, what am I going to do? You know, I need to leave a legacy or something like that. And so I said, I fancy doing a world record. And she said, what in? And I said, well, cycling seems good, you know, because it's not hurting my knee. Yeah. So I'd only cycled 20 miles as the maximum before I applied for the world record. My wife then found the world's longest road, which was from southern Argentina to northern Alaska. It's 14,000 miles or 22,000 kilometers. So I was like, perfect. You know, that's the one thing. Yeah. So for me, it's like, you know, I wasn't a cyclist, but I had a lot of experience, time in the military, in the private security sector. And I always say that you can't be experienced without experiences. And so all I needed to do was take those experiences and just put it into a new discipline. I knew I had the mindset. I knew I had the planning capabilities. Yeah, and just put it into that. And so, yeah, you know, it sounds arrogant, you know, maybe for some of the cyclists, that this guy is 40 years old, he's only cycled 20 miles, and he's just applied to break the world record for the world's longest road. And so, yeah, Guinness came back and said, yes, you've been successful in your application. So Alana and I also, during this period of leaving the military, although I was going through my own issues with the military itself, I always was doing a lot in the philanthropic angle, especially in the military sector. And as we've just touched on now working with the Honour Foundation. Right. So I was an ambassador for the Special Boat Service Association, the Royal British Legion back in UK. And so we had the challenge, and I now needed to find a sort of campaign message, what we would do it for. Yeah. So as you touched on your opening brief, Prince Harry and I are good friends of 15 years. Him and I met 2007 on a JTAC course together, and we've just been friends ever since. You know, he's been to some of the charity events that I run. I sort of help him on some of his stuff behind the scenes, but this was the first time we were going to come out together in public. So I rang him up, and one of the stuff I was doing from I had an intelligence fusion cell based in Mozambique and Tanzania, and I identified the smuggling routes from the ivory from Africa to the Far East. And so every few months, him and I would sit down and I'd disseminate that information to him. So I rang him up. I said, look, I'm going to cycle the world's longest road. What campaign should we do it for? And he was just about to launch a campaign with his brother and Kate. This is 2017 when I called him. called Heads Together, which was a campaign umbrella on mental health. And so I wasn't really aware too much about mental health, seen it firsthand with some of my friends, but not aware how big it was throughout the whole of society. You know, young children, teenagers, veterans, postnatal depression, you know, it covers the full spectrum. It doesn't discriminate mental health. It affects everyone. And so
everyone gets something.
Perfect. Yeah. So I said, perfect. Let's do that one. So I set a target of £1 million for Heads Together. And then I was asked, you know, what is the message you're trying to promote? And so for me, I just looked internally and I said, well, physical activity helps your mental state. And that was the message I tried promoting on this challenge. I was met with resistance at first, saying it's not been scientifically proven. This was back in 2017, but now it's very much recognized as one of the coping mechanisms. So yeah, so I now
right. That's how most of us cope. That's what keeps us not from killing ourselves. You know what I mean? Like my iron breakfast, you know, so I could be PG and PC for everybody the rest of the day. Okay.
Yeah, and it was something that was easy to me. I could actually relate to that. You know, thankfully for me, I haven't had to take any pharmaceuticals or speak to anyone, but that's probably because I've just kept, you know, but I did see myself deteriorate after my injury. It did affect my mental health. So it was easy. It was easy messaging. So that was the challenge, and that was the campaign that we worked on. And yeah, I had a year to train, and I'd start doing all the research. You know, I just took a military set of orders, put it on here, and just crossed out ammunition. But soon, soon started to learn how to ride. Reached out to previous record holders, got as much information from them as I could to help me with my planning, which was really, really nice to see. You know, I thought they'd be keep it close to their chest, but they were very open in sharing that. And actually, they all started in Alaska and finished in Argentina. So for me, being a military guy, I was like, well, why take an issue? Started in Alaska, finished in Argentina, but all their issues were in South and Central America, be it languages, bureaucracy at the borders, spares to the bikes. So for me, I heard the phrase "eat the frog." I'm like, well, why don't I start at the bottom, eat the frog, get the issues out of the way early, and then when we're in North America. So that's what I did. One of the things I was proud of, just because everyone went from north to south, didn't mean it was the right decision. And I went the other way. It wasn't because I was going uphill.
And he wanted to do it all the way uphill the whole
to make it even harder. Yeah.
Oh man, that's awesome. Dude, that's amazing. And you ended up breaking 2 world records. What were they?
Yeah, so it was the fastest to cycle South America. I took 10 days off the South America world record. And a lot of people messaged me and they're like, oh, well, that's it, the pressure's off. And I said, no, that was just a tick off. You know, I was breaking it all down into manageable bite sizes, countries, days, 4 rides a day. Rather than looking at the whole challenge itself, because the enormity would just overwhelm you. But I got into Del Rio and into Texas on day 70, and I was 14 days ahead of the world record. So I was perfect. I can take a day's rest here or there. But Alana, as we all know, Alana's running the campaign. She's doing everything behind the scenes, and so she rang me and 5 times. So normally she keeps all those distractions away from me. So my initial thought was there's something wrong with the children, because she wouldn't ring that often. So I jumped off the bike, got a signal and rang her back. And she said, what would you wear to a royal wedding? I said, sorry. She goes, what do you wear to a royal wedding? And I said, I don't understand. She goes, oh, we've just been invited to Harry and Meghan's wedding. I said, that's nice. And she goes, no, you don't understand. She goes, for you to be back in time, the last flight out of Prudhoe Bay in Alaska is day 102. So going into the phone call, I was 14 days ahead. 10 minutes later, I'm now a day behind the world record. Not the world record, behind my new objective. So everything I'd done up until now was great. It was great, but you now need to go faster. So I got to Lubbock in Texas. Yeah. And we had 60-mile-an-hour winds and tornadoes. So I was now grounded for another 24 hours. I'm now 2 days behind target. So I was just doing a lot of planning. There's an app called Windy TV, which gives you the strength and directions of the winds every hour for the next 2 weeks. Wow. And for me to get out of Lubbock, I had to cycle 340 miles in the next 36 hours to miss it. And so I just played chess with Mother Nature. The majority of my cycling done in the evening. And strange enough, from a security perspective, we fought all the issues in South and Central America, and we never had any issues one of our support vehicles got broken into in Colorado Springs. So the whole journey, it was actually in the US.
That we get tapped.
We
got locals want to tap you in the US, man. That's awesome.
Exactly, yeah. So, but I had 17 days planned for North America. I did it in 11 and a half days. Got to Cheyenne, picked up a beautiful tailwind. I cycled 270 miles in 11 hours. So I gained that time up. The world record was smashed, and I was looking like I was going to go to this wedding. I then I was at a town called Whitehorse, about a week outside from Prudhoe Bay, and I get a message from a friend when I was sat in McDonald's just eating as much as I could, and he said, look, there's this professional cyclist. He's got 3 other world records, sponsored by Red Bull, all the big brands. You know, he's come out on social media that day and announced that he's going to be the first man to do it in under 100 days in August. So I was like, oh, so every time I felt like I hit my objective kept moving. Yeah. And so I wasn't happy. I was happy, but I wasn't happy just to sort of rest on my laurels and just steadily come in. So I cycled for 22 hours in the last 30 hours in -18 through the snow and the blizzards to come in 99 days, 12 hours and 56 minutes. So it wasn't the original plan, but the sort of success of that project was, and I always talk about importance of having a plan. It was being reactive to the situation changes as it was coming, you know, and that just came from, you know, I've never done this bike ride before, but I just sort of related it to stuff that I'd done in the past, and just you can't control the uncontrollables. There's nothing you can do, and so that was the success of it.
Yeah, man, dude, that's amazing, and it kind of goes full circle to that military being able to adjust with the pieces on the board as they show up, and the flow with that is huge, man. I love it.
Yeah.
But good intel driven mission as well.
Yeah, you know? Exactly. Yeah.
What do you, as we wrap this up, just a few more bangers questions real quick. What are you doing in the private security? Are you still consulting, or are you still doing things, or what's your role now?
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked. Yeah, I am. I was on a call the other day with one of the heads of station in one of the Middle Eastern countries, and he's like, "I've just Googled you," and I said, "Look, there's 2 Dean Stotts. There's the one. You're like, there's the one that There's the one that the world sees. There's the cyclist, the author, the guy who's doing TV, podcasts, and things like that. But then there's also the Dean Stott who's still very much in the shadows. Is coordinating a lot of crisis management stuff. You know, I won't be the person physically going out taking people out of countries, but I still have as you know, it's all about your network. I still have a great network of guys who are happy to stay under the radar, especially those that are transitioning as well, getting out and giving them their first 1 or 2 jobs just to take that pressure off them as well. So still very much doing that. You know, Afghanistan last year, because of the Canadian embassy, the amount of phone calls I got. So I got involved with that. That was very much a different scenario from Canadian embassy, because it wasn't physically going in. That was all about phone calls and yeah. So and obviously now I'm looking towards Taiwan and things like that. So what I've sort of learned over the years is, and where I sort of specialize is that crisis management evacuation plans. Afghanistan, I use as an example. That was obviously huge because it was on the world stage, but that happens all the time where people say they have something in place and they don't have place. Insurance companies call force majeure and things like that. So I normally get a phone call when they need assistance or they've already been let down by their security provider. But what I'm really trying to push now to some of these people is that actually, if to be proactive rather than reactive, rather than waiting for the scenario to happen. You know, if you're proactive, it's actually 10% of the cost of what it is for me to then ramp up the reactive team. But a lot of these security companies, and they do, some of them have plans, but the insurance company as well, you know, they're only responsible for getting the aircraft on the ground. No one's responsible for getting them from A to B. So where we specialize in, me and my guys, is the first mile. It's getting you from A to B. It's pressure testing. It's stress testing your evacuation plan and your crisis. So still very much doing a lot of that, advising with some of the ultra high net worths and the family offices as well. And sort of like I say, you know, the media is great. You know, it's nice, but it doesn't pay well and it has a shelf life. I love security. I love problem solving, and I love obviously being able to put food and water on some of my friends' tables as well, especially during that transition period until they find their own feet. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. No, that's awesome. Creating that for everyone else is amazing. Your niche is amazing. I was in and out of a lot of that Afghanistan stuff and got to just the failure points, man, I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. Okay, bro. Here's the buyer. Here's the ask. You need to get it done. Oh, you can't do it. There was a lot. It's people who do things, and had to shake a lot of trees. I wish we were talking then. I should have gave you a call. I should have given you a call.
It was nice. It was nice to see. I've got to be careful what I say. It was nice to see humanity wanting to come together and help, but it got crowded with those that actually knew what they were doing and those that that didn't. And I think I had 47 WhatsApp groups, everything from the British Boxing Association telling me the boxing team were at risk when they weren't at risk, to the Housewives of Orange County had raised like $2 million or something, and they want to get people out. But what you had here was obviously there was desperation, and there was people doing things wrong, and actually. The FBI are now investigating a lot of human trafficking. So a lot of these have all dropped off. So I couldn't say yes to everyone. And that was the hardest thing for me. I couldn't say yes to everyone. But we had to make sure that the documentation was right. They had a host nation and things like that. Because when this audit trail comes back, we'd done everything above board. And that's, unfortunately, that was what was happening with others is they were... And other people were financially gaining on the back end of other people's crisis. Canadian Embassy, 18 military, 4 diplomats. I charged $7,000.
My man.
That was it. But because for me, and that was covered the fish wagons, my fixer, and I took nothing of it. But because I couldn't be seen to be financially. Don't get me wrong. With the Afghan and other things, you need to make a business, but from that, I didn't want to financially gain on other people. The importance to me was to get them home. But I'm now seeing the repercussions of that. I'm now seeing the benefits of that evacuation, and so and I think also we were limited on time restraints. Anything above 20,000 had to get signed off from other authorities, and they needed to move in. I said, well, I'm not charged. I'll charge you 7, and that's it. It's my baseline. And so
you were in and out, and you were in and out. How long did it take you from start to finish?
It was about a week from by the time I came in. Did the planning, sort of spoke to them, and did the recce's. Spoke to the tribal elders. About a week. It was interesting on the finance one. Actually, a lot of stuff we're doing now, and I always call them the big 5 and things like that, is that we end up doing the work for them, but they then mark it up to their clients. And because they have overheads, they have staff, they have things like that. So I'm more of a disruptor that I just take that middle layer out, still provide the service, but for the client, they still get, still getting the same product, but a fraction of the price. Yeah.
Yeah, man. That's good for people to know. That's good. Yeah. Because there was a lot of profiteering going on and all kinds of weirdness. There were good things happening, but of course, it's cool. And the thing, and that's the thing, there's some great guys and girls out there, and there's those that sort of see that situation and try and monetize from it. And for me, that's I wouldn't be comfortable. Don't get me wrong, I understand businesses need to function. So, but there's a time and a place. 100%, man, 100%. So your book.
Yes.
Let's talk about it a little bit.
I forgot about it. But so when I did the bike ride, I finished that, and I didn't really look beyond the bike ride. I didn't see a career in guest speaking, TV, or the media. I did it. So I wasn't smuggling people across borders. And so I got the opportunity to write a book, and it's a great book. It's almost like 3 stories in one. It's my childhood in the military, the private security sector, and we've only touched on a couple. There's some great stories in there with me with Libya, ramping up 150.
Like 2 chapters of your life could be a movie. Done. Like just 2 chapters, like the bicycling and getting out of the military. That's not even the military, however many deployments you did. Like all that could just be right there. So
it's interesting. A lot of people say, unless you didn't realize it was it was true. You'd think it was fiction, how it just sort of like goes from one. I mean, the bike ride's the third area, but the book originally got released actually in the UK in September 19. And me and my family moved over in October 20, right in the middle of COVID. While the world was paused, we just saw an opportunity.
Came over here.
We always wanted to move to America. You know, we loved the mindset over here, the get-go attitude. You know, I'd done a lot of work with the US Special Forces. My wife had done a few road trips, but we just got distracted with life. You know, we had 2 kids and the businesses, and we just, before we blinked, my daughter was 9 and my son was 4. And they said, well, let's look at the US. I mean, COVID then hit, so it gave us that opportunity. So, you know, we just boxed up. We couldn't fly into the US. We went to Mexico City for 14 days. And then my wife just
come over with the no wall, just walk.
Yeah.
Anyway.
8 bags, 2 kids and a wife, no real plan. And my wife's on Zillow, and the school ratings were good in Orange County. So that's how we landed in Orange County. And so when we got here, then we just branched out from there. You know, the visas are all been sorted now, and we're enjoying life.
We're running into each other at the pumpkin patch. You know what I'm saying? Like,
exactly. Yeah. And very much, probably one of the only families that really enjoyed COVID, because we just did a whole change in life, a whole change. Yeah. Wow. But I when I got here, but, you know, because of the relationship with Harry, that I always, you know, it's one of the ones. I have my own story. I have a great story, but I'm always known as Prince Harry's special forces friend, you know, and there's worse things to be called. But the People magazine wanted to do a 4-page special on me. I mean, as you touched on, I was going on Jocko's podcast. So these are like big, high profile media stuff. And so I reached out to my publisher and I said, look, I'm going on this guy's podcast, you know, I've got People magazine, and they weren't interested because your book's been out over a year and they're already looking at the other books, which is fine. So Jocko got me to #1 on Kindle because there's no books available. So my wife, being the entrepreneur, you know, reached out to our publishers and said, well, you haven't launched in the US or North America yet. And she said, don't. She goes, we will buy the rights from you and do it ourselves. So we bought the rights from them. And we totally redesigned the book cover. The book cover in the UK is like my dark face, couple of frogmen. And we sort of looked at what worked with that book and what didn't work. You know, you didn't actually realize there was a cycling wheel record in it. There's no picture. I mean, the American, you know, 511, as you know, you work with 511, they've helped me redesign this. And it's all about light and hope. And so you probably wouldn't get away with that image on the shelves in UK with me.
Oh, yeah. Holding a Ma Deuce or something like that.
FN Minimi with ammunition wrapped around my neck and a baseball cap back to front. You know, pretty much quite a disturbing picture, but summarizes my time in the military, sort of laughing. And so we Americanized the book. We changed the grammar. We added a couple more chapters in there. But in the UK, it was endorsed by some great names like Bear Grylls, Serrano Fines, Leveson Wood. But US people wouldn't really know who it is. So Jocko Willink, Admiral McCraven, and Bear Grylls. And so, yeah, really just give it a fresh lick of paint, as they say, and it's its first launch in the US.
That's awesome, man. I love your guys' like isms, you know? You guys have those, the way you use English is awesome, man.
I know,
that's what's up, man. No, that's cool. That you republished it, hammered the charts. And like I said, it's like this podcast has been so easy. I literally have just been sitting here like going on this whole journey with you, man. Just following, learning from you. Yeah, brother. As I start to wrap it up, man, our exit questions. If you guys, obviously, if you haven't, I don't have to say this, but obviously you guys got to get the book. You know, he's interesting, man. It's a lifelong warrior's journey. You've done a lot of high level things, man, in a lot of areas. I'm honored to be able to call you a friend, man. So,
likewise.
Super cool. What would you say is one habit people should look at that would help them be a better person or a better protector?
A better person, better protector.
Yeah, just stuff.
As a better protector, be able to sort of step back. Don't never rush in. Always step back and quickly make a quick assessment. And it's actually really interesting because the prologue sort of talks about that as well. How I misread a situation, which really got nearly turned into a disaster. Whereas actually, if I'd sort of stepped back, read the room or read the situation, it would have been a different outcome. Luckily, it wasn't as bad as it was. So I would say that. And then my sort of personal one to people as well, whether it's in security or just in life, is and I used to use it with my recruits. Anticipation is worse than participation. A lot of people will overthink things, whether they're doing a challenge, whether they're doing security, whether they're doing whatever in life, and they will overthink it and tell themselves why they can't do it. But then when they actually, brave enough and then do it, they look back on reflection and say, actually, that wasn't that bad. So anticipation is worse than participation, my one for anyone.
Okay. Yeah. I was going to ask favorite quote, favorite mantra next.
My favorite quote, and I've actually got it tattooed on my back, is the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing.
Outstanding. Yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah.
100%, man. Don't forget that, y'all. Don't forget that, man. That's what this world's all about. The strongest side does dominate. So, you've seen it all over the world. There are people right now being victimized, and it's because good's just not able to do anything about it,
Yeah.
That bad guy with a gun, that active shooter is going to dominate until a good human shows up who's formidable.
And as you say, that's a small minority percentage that the media like to focus on. I've talked about some of my projects for you around the world. None of them would be successful if it wasn't for the local community and the local support. Everyone's quite quick to tarnish a certain community because a certain bad group.
Yeah.
But in Libya, the safe houses, they're run by locals. They were moving as it's that group that people don't see, and there is so much more good in the world than bad, and people need to remember that. Yeah,
dude, I was trying to market for an event, and I was typing in. I was like, because it's like the world is a dangerous place. Like, I'm getting my whole marketing thing, and I'm like looking at FBI crime statistics, and it was like it was like a violent crime happened. It was like the world was way more dangerous during the 80s. It's actually gotten safer and safer and safer up until COVID time and started getting weird again. But leading up to there, I was like, dang, the world's actually gotten safer and safer. There's so much good that happens. It just doesn't get eyeballs on the news or social media. So as a different response in your brain, you're not going to pay as close attention to. Makes people less money that are behind all the machines, so. And
it's interesting. Yeah. Interesting to sort of, you and I sort of showcasing, the good that is out there. But yeah, it's right. It's clickbait. It doesn't sell. Yeah,
100%. And then ultimately, brother, what's it all for? How would you like to be remembered?
Wow.
This so
it's a hard one. Yeah, this is a hard one. I definitely don't want to be remembered as a cyclist because I'm not a cyclist. You know what I mean? My wife didn't marry me because I look like Lance Armstrong, so that's one thing on there. I think for me, I like to be remembered as someone that inspires others to chase their dreams and their goals. My father told me I'd last 2 minutes in the military. What I mean? Yeah, and it's like, and there's been so many periods in my life where you have been met with not resistance, but people saying that you can't do it. And for me, there's no point in arguing with those people, because you can argue as much as you want. You're not going to change their mind. The only way you can change their mind is action. And so that's what I do is I go prove it through action. Yeah. And then, mic drop and walk off. So.
And then have them and let them look themselves in the mirror with their limitations after that, and hopefully.
And it is. I tend to find it's those that sort of criticize. There's those who know that they probably couldn't do it, and they give you full credit and admit that. And then there's those who are able to achieve it, and so those who can do it and have done it. It's those who may be able to do it who are not willing. They're the ones when I say anticipation is worse than participation. They're not taking that first step, but they will criticize and be more upset because you did and they didn't.
Yep, because they know deep down inside they probably could, but they ain't willing to do it.
Didn't take the risk. As the SAS say, who dares wins.
Yeah, man, I love that saying. It's good stuff, man.
Well, ours is by strength and guile in the SBS.
By strength and what?
Guile, which means brain. By strength and brain. Yeah.
I love it, man. That's good stuff. Awesome, brother. Well, this has been an amazing conversation, man. Thanks so much for making this happen. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for being who you are, man. That's an imprint on this world that only you've really done, that only you can do, man. And I think there's a lot of our world needs good, strong, humble, competent men and humans, but also dudes need guys like you to look up to, man. And I really, it's an honor to be able to crystallize, canonize a lot of the stuff you've done, point people in a good direction and be connected, brother. So much love and respect. Heck yeah.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, brother. 100%. All right, cool. Where can people find you before we let you go, man?
I'm not going to give out my home address because that's not a good security.
Yeah.
Yeah. My website is www.deanstott.com. I am on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Dean Stott or at Dean Stott SBS.
Too easy, brother. Awesome, man. Well, we will talk soon. It's an honor and a privilege, brother. Later.
Thank you so much. Cheers, buddy.
This is my MCK. There are many like it, but this one is mine. If you've got a firearm sitting around, a pistol that you are not doing anything with, get an MCK. They make them for every single model. If you want a micro conversion kit that will turn your handgun into a force multiplier, get one, man. They are ultra affordable. CAA MCK micro conversion kits are changing the game, y'all. So if you don't have one, you need to get one. Get one. Your women, children, people that are less physically potent will be able to fire your firearm to farther distances with more accuracy. You will be able to fire your firearm to farther distances with more accuracy. I want to get one of these into the hands of 100,000 more protectors this year, because ultimately we are only as good as the nation is only as good as its protection. Your home is only as safe and as good as your ability to protect it. MCK, go get one. Drop your handgun in, take it to the next level. Out. Boom. Yo, if you're a private security professional wanting to take your game to the next level, go to executiveprotectiontrainingday.com to check out my personal success package for private security professionals. Check it out, executiveprotectiontrainingday.com. And remember, y'all, hard skills do save lives, but soft skills get you paid. Boom. Boom. And to support this podcast, go to executiveprotectionlifestyle.com and contribute to our Patreon account. That Patreon account is what helps me make this podcast possible, contributing to this brand, what we're doing here, making it so that I can bring better guests on, making it so that we can plan more events and just expand the contribution to the private security industry, and also to making America a safer place. Do whatever you can, contribute whatever you can, because it makes all of these things possible. Thanks for those contributions. Yo, and before we go, I got to shout out to the sponsors, starting out with Primary Weapon Systems, PWS. They truly are the evolution of the rifle. Use Byron for 10% off. Grayman & Company, the most comfortable tactical suits in the game. Use Byron for 10% off with them. Until the next podcast, this is Byron Rodgers, protector by nature and by trade. Out. Boom.